Hey everybody, and welcome to FISA Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caroe, and Marlene, how's your winter been?
Hi, Rebecca. Nice to see everybody. It seems like it's been a long time since we weren't here after the holidays, so it's kind of nice to get back on track. And actually, here in southern Quebec, we've had a pretty classical winter so far. There's enough snow that it's white and skiing is good, but our lake is frozen. So, I'm still in winter erg mode, which is fine, and lots of ski erg also. So I'm doing well. Good.
Fantastic. So FISA Masters Rowing Radio is a program for older athletes who are still keen to train and enjoy their rowing. Marlene is an expert coach who specializes in coaching masters, and I am your fellow student and also a masters rower. Now, this show wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. And this week we have two sponsors. The first one is from Prygl Rowing Camps. Are you a masters rower who needs a coaching boost? Many masters don't get regular coaching, and you can learn to row faster at the Prygl Rowing Camp. These camps have coaching by experienced coaches. You work in a small group and are guaranteed personalized coaching and recommendations. There's individual video analysis. You'll learn how to understand rowing data and how to use it to row faster. They supply boats, which are new Wintec and fluid design shells, and you'll be training on a quiet 3-kilometer long rowing lake in Brno in the Czech Republic. It's not far from Prague and Vienna airports. Their first camp in July 2020 can be combined with the Open Czech Masters Regatta. This is one of the largest Masters regattas in Europe. And the second camp is in August 2020, and it's an ideal preparation for the World Rowing Masters Regatta, which is in nearby Ottensheim in Austria. You can get more information at pryglrowing.com/rowingchat or the link on the screen, which is rowing.chat/sponsor, and you'll find Prygl Rowing Camps in the link there. Now, our second link sponsor is actually Marlene and myself, because we've got a program that we've just launched, which is called a head racing 12-week program. If you're not paying to be a subscriber to Masters Rowing, you can get a 3-month program just as a single purchase. It lasts for 12 weeks and it leads up to a long distance 5K regatta or 5K plus regatta. It's perfect if you're in going to be doing the 8's Head in London or the Veteran 8's Head, if you're going to be doing the Heineken regatta, and if you want, you can train for 6 times a week, 5 times a week, or 4 times a week. So the plan adapts and shows you how to make the adaptations that suit your unique situation. Now, you can get details of all of this program off of the FISAMastersRowing.com website. And if you go to a page called Courses, and then it's called Head Racing 12-Week Program. And again, I will give the link in the show notes so that you can pick it up later. So moving on, Marlene, February. This year is beginning to go super fast. What's in the February FISA Masters subscribers program? We've got 6 modules.
Well, I'll review it a little bit. First of all, our programs, the training program, which is your rowing workouts. We have 2 different programs. The first program is focused on your February preparation if you're doing a spring head race. So that might be the Veterans Head or the Heineken Regatta. So it's geared towards a March event. The second program is for general 1K preparation. So for those of you who are training over the winter, depending which hemisphere you live in, our southern hemisphere people will move into 1K racing in May, whereas the North American schedule will be more towards summer racing with their peak in August. But, this is still a period of general preparation for both. So the 1K program is focused on that. And each program has a strength program, strength recommendations that go along to match those two programs. Our technique focus is a drill called open palm sculling. And so there will be a video instruction on that. And our performance module, we're going to talk about how to determine your ideal racing weight, or a methodology to zero in on what your best racing weight is relative to your performance. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And our rowing lifestyle and our bonus modules we're going to surprise you.
In fact, I can tell you I'm really looking forward to the bonus module, because we can reveal that it's going to be a online live webinar, but we'll tell you more on the 1st of the month.
Right.
Now on with the podcast. We wanted to start off by talking about motivation. It's midwinter. It's a grim time for some of us. Marlene, what are your top tips for motivating yourself?
Well, it is a hard time of the year if you're in the middle of erg season. I think if you live somewhere where you're getting out on the water, it's a little bit easier. But if you're definitely training indoors, you might need a little boost if you're not doing indoor erg events right now. But, one of the important points about motivation is it's not your motivation that causes you to start something new. It's starting something new, a new behavior that then helps you become motivated, because you decide, okay, I'm going to start training 5 days per week, for example. The fact that you start training 5 days per week and you make the decision to do that supports your motivation to now make that a new habit. And with motivation, if you everybody's going to have problems at some point in time. There might be times when you're tired. There might be times when you just feel you've got too much to do, or you're overwhelmed. And I think one of the important things about motivation is expect some pitfalls. Expect that every once in a while things are going to get messed up. You're going to get off track. So what do you do then? How do you prevent that from happening? And I like to think of motivation as creating a good habit and a routine. If you have a routine and for example, when I come home from work, I'm going to have a snack, and then I'm going to put my rowing trowel on, and I'm going to sit down on the erg. If you come home and you put your rowing trowel on, you're probably not going to pour yourself a glass of wine. So, creating an action that supports what you want to do is part of creating the routine. Like, when you walk into your changing room or your bedroom, there are your shoes that you wear for erging. There are your tights. There's your shirt. Maybe you've already picked out your podcast. Hopefully you're listening to the Rowing Chat. I listen to Rowing Chats when I erg. I always listen to podcasts when I erg. But pick out your podcast ahead of time so that okay, tomorrow I'm going to listen to that one. And if you come home and you have to base it in action, and if you, as I said, you put those tights on, you're not going to go out to the bar and have a beer with your rowing tights on. So think about what makes it easier, what eliminates friction to do that action that you want to do. If it's your weight workout, and you need to go to the gym, think about, okay, there's an idea called linking habits. You might say that, I have to go to the supermarket. So on Tuesday and Thursdays, I always go to the supermarket. Well, why don't you pick a supermarket that the gym is on the way to the supermarket? So you decide, I leave work, I go to the gym, After I finish the gym, I go to the supermarket that you plan to go to, then you go home. So if you're going to, there's something you're going to do anyway, and you can link another thing to that, like I'm going to walk my daughter to school, and instead of driving, I decide that we're going to go by bike every day, or something like that, that, you know, you can tie your fitness goals into other things that you may do, which, you know, it kind of beefs up your motivation. Another idea about motivation is it's when the pain of not doing something is greater than the pain of doing it. So there becomes a point when you say, like, I have to do this. You know, I can't sit on the sofa watching Netflix any longer. If I'm going to, you know, you make a deal with yourself. If you really have to watch Netflix while you're rowing on the erg. Watch Netflix when you're on your spinning bike. You know, that's another idea of linking two things together. Or maybe you're studying, and you say, okay, well, when I'm doing this, I'm on the elliptical in the gym. I can listen to this lecture and study it. So, you know, motivation has to be connected to action, and you have to also match it with the right level of difficulty. This is an important thing about challenge. If what you're doing is too easy, it's not going to be interesting. You're going to get bored with it. Oh, okay, this is so easy. This is, you know, I'm just spending time doing this. If you set your goal and it's too hard, then it becomes overwhelming. And, you know, like, oh, I'm trying to achieve such and such a split, and like, you're just not there yet. You know, that's going to get discouraging. That's going to be a block to your motivation. So you have to kind of find what that fine line is, that this is challenging, and I can see that I can accomplish this rowing this split in the next foreseeable future. I can see that I can add one more day to my workout schedule per week. And, you know, it's something that may be challenging, but it's completely doable. And motivation is very closely linked to matching the right level of challenge.
That is so true. And then tracking your progress. For me, I definitely like to write it down, take a photo of my score at the end of the erg, and I can then see what I've done. And of course, part of the program that we choose to publish is a repeating workout, so that you do the same workout more than once. And that gives you a chance to track your own progress.
Yeah, and to improve on it, because it's just, you know, and I think, you know, think in micro terms. You know, I like to tell people, like, when you're training physically, think about that you're training, you're changing your body at the cellular level. Okay, you're not just like a big thing and you're doing something to it. You know, you're changing your muscle cells, you're changing your metabolism. These are micro changes. And look, when you look at your motivation, look at micro progress steps. You know, like improving that split a 10th counts. It counts, you know, and some people say, oh, you know, it's not that much. It doesn't matter how much it is. If you're moving the needle in the right direction, it counts. And that's why tracking is definitely connected to more successful practice, for sure.
And don't forget to reward yourself. Little rewards. That glass of wine, possibly a crude dinner, something that you will find fun.
Right. Definitely.
And Marlene, what do you recommend if you miss a day, if you have a bad day and you miss it, not because you're injured or sick or traveling for work? What do you do?
Well, first, I would expect it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen sometimes. You know, you're going to fall off the wagon every once in a while, and you're going to miss a day. I think if you make a commitment to yourself that say, okay, you know, it just happened. It's no big deal. You miss a day of training. You can do first of all, that day, you can do some other things. You can make sure you eat well, so that you're not eating junk food or extra calories. So maybe you didn't burn your calories training that day, but you can modify a little bit by doing something good or healthy in another department of your life. Make a commitment not to miss 2 days. You know, I would say if you miss one every once in a while, that's going to happen and realize that, make a commitment not to miss 2 days. And then I think you're kind of operating on a different level.
Good points all round. So ready for your motivation?
Yeah, something fun. Right. A big reward.
So we're looking at planning a camp. So camps form a really useful part of an athlete's year's training. It's an opportunity to take time out, to get away and do something that's a little different from your normal routine, and to have good practice in a timely fashion, but also a thoughtful fashion. Traditionally, camps are trips where you go to somewhere else to train, but they can equally be organized and run out of your own regular training base, perhaps just over a weekend. Now, the things that camp can do for you, usually you train more than once a day, maybe twice a day. You have an opportunity then to take more time to do your training. You can get videoed because you can train in daylight, which particularly for those training in the winter months will appreciate. And generally camps have up to 3 different objectives. One possible camp goal is just training. Can we get some miles under our belt? Can we do some good practice? A second goal for a camp could be technique. Learning to improve your fine motor skills so that you better handle your own rowing or sculling. And a third possible goal for a camp is crew selection, to start to put together the racing combinations that you're going to be racing in later in the year. Now, a camp can have 2 of these goals, but generally should not have all 3. You won't get them all done, and you're better off just to focus on one if you can. Marlene, what other things do people need to think about when they're going on a camp?
I think if you're going away from home to go on a camp, it's a really nice, refreshing break. I think just getting into a new environment is interesting and refreshing from maybe your environment at home. If you live in a colder climate, maybe you're going somewhere warm where you could really use 3 or 4 days of warm weather and getting out into the boat versus being training indoors in tanks or on the ergs. And you get to meet, depending on if you're going to a camp that could be organized with a team that you row with. It could be a physical camp where you go and there are coaches on staff there. Getting some input from other coaches. I think every time you go to a camp and every time you're open to receiving coaching, you're asking a coach for input and for feedback. And you may hear some things that you've heard before, but you might hear them in a little bit different language that helps you learn it better. I think every coach has their priority things that they look at. So you may have a coach that works on an element of your stroke that perhaps some other coaches don't look at, but it's a good way to get feedback. And I think every time you work with a different coach, regardless of what the level of that coach is, you learn something new, and you might learn a little bit different way of approaching some part of the stroke that you were working on. And after a camp, it takes time to process what you've learned in a weekend. I know certainly when I'm coaching in a camp situation, one of my goals is to make sure that athlete knows how to practice this skill when they go home. Because in a weekend situation, you can't expect them to master a new skill. But if you see it's something that they need to work on and they agree to work on that, it's important to make sure that they know how to go home and that they have actual reference points, that they know how to self-coach themselves to then make that skill more refined and to groove in that skill. So for me as a coach in a camp situation, I'm looking to make sure, do you know how to go home and practice that? And I want to make sure that the athletes are really clear about that, because that's where they're going to develop the habit. And it's a great way to meet, if you're going to a camp where people come from all over the world or all over the country, it's a great way to just meet new people and to network, and have fun and hang out and eat breakfast or go out to dinner. And, I think there's a very big social part of it too that's fun.
Yeah, telling rowing tales.
Exactly.
If you have a camp at your own clubhouse, one suggestion we have is to start on the Friday night and do it at the weekend. So start with a shared dinner on the Friday night where you can each bring some food and it can be potluck. But that gives an opportunity then for whoever's leading the coaching to explain to the group what the goals are and remind them of the times of the sessions and what you're going to be doing, perhaps to pre-arrange the lineups as well, so that at least for the first session, you know exactly what's going on. And that little social time together is also extremely pleasant. I did a camp in the South Island of New Zealand with two good coaching friends of mine. And I said that I would be available for doing videoing and I'd help with the catering. And we had the first day, shot all the video, came back, people were relaxing and we were doing the cooking, and we had the first evening meal, Marlene, and we drank virtually all the wine that we'd planned for an entire weekend.
So you had nothing left then. You had to go to the store again.
It was a good camp.
Masters rowers do that. So, it is, we're
it's
allowed.
An important part of Masters rowing is rowing and drinking.
Well, I found too, like when I have gone to clubs as a visiting coach, we almost always try to do a potluck Friday evening. It's a great, if you don't know the people, it's a great way to meet them. And I would even go so far as maybe, after dinner, like we'd pull out an erg and to sit down on the erg and to actually go over some of the principles of what we're going to work on the water the next day. Because then when people meet, say Saturday morning, when they meet, you can actually just get right out on the water. So you can maximize your water time by using the land time to explain what you want to go over and let people ask questions. And then they go home at night and they can kind of process a little bit, and then they're ready for Saturday, and you just get in the boats and you go, so that's a good way just to, use as much time as possible on the water when you're in a weekend camp and you want to maximize that.
Yeah, I ran a camp once, which was how to row in a single. So we have a lot of people who row in crew boats or scull and crew boats. And so we actually did 6 consecutive days. And I borrowed a whole load of singles from privately owned singles because the club didn't have so many. And we all went out every single day and it was good. So by the end of 6 days, everyone had quite a lot of practice.
Oh, that's a long camp. I mean, 6 days, that's a lot of good targeted attention. And then people, if you row somewhere where you don't have coaching, going to a camp plays a really important role in terms of getting some coaching, because there are people who they rely on going to camps all year as their main source of coaching. So, but in the middle of the winter, it's just really nice, to get off the erg and say, go down to a warm place and row for a few days and get some new ideas, because it also, when you learn new things, it takes time to process. And I know certainly in New England and things, sometimes people say, well, I'll wait till April and then I'll go to a camp because I'm about to get back on the water, or March.
Yeah.
But there is benefit to going in January and February, because you're going to learn some new skills. And as I said, it takes time to process those skills. So even though you're not immediately going back on the water, as you're visualizing things, as you're mentally working on some of those ideas, even if you're training indoors, that's still a very active process. So I don't think it certainly is helpful to go just before you get on the water, but I don't think it's a bad idea to go anytime. The coaching is always in there, and the feedback and how you process it, takes time. So I think, going anytime that makes you happy is good. So.
Yeah, don't forget that when you row a lot on the erg, you lose the finesse of your skill on the water. Erg rowing is somewhat different, even if you're rowing on a dynamic erg. And so it does take a little bit of time to get back into it.
Yeah, and you when you transition, there are a lot of small muscles that you use in your spine, in your hands, that you utilize in the boat that you don't utilize when you're on the erg, because the erg is, even if, as you said, being on a dynamic erg, your hands work differently, your feathers squaring, all these little adjustments you make in your spine because of the boat is, you're in a dynamic fluid situation versus a stable situation. So those are things you have to account for, that fatigue when you get back on the water. And I think when you're at a camp too, don't row yourself to the point of huge fatigue, because if you get too fatigued, you're going to start to break down, and your stroke mechanics are going to break down. So even depending on how the camp is run, if you're at a camp where you're rowing and the coaches are circulating, it's okay to stop rowing for a few minutes and take a break and just rest. Yeah. And, rest, regroup. It's even in some camp situations, you can go into the dock, you can get out of the boat, stretch for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, get back in, row again, so you do have to watch fatigue levels, and, you can take little breaks so that you don't get overly fatigued, so that you keep, keep making progress and rowing well, because you don't want to end your day rowing badly, because the next morning you're going to go on the water rowing badly. So you want to come off the water the way you want to go on the water the next day.
That's really good advice for coaches who are organizing the sessions. Plan the length of the sessions with an eye to the skill and endurance and fitness of your athletes.
Absolutely, because there are even situations where, say you're in a team boat, you're in an 8, you can come into the dock, keep the boat at the dock. You don't always have to take the boat out of the water. People can get out, take a 10 or 15 minute break, get back in the boat, do something else. So, depending on the experience of your crew, you can do things like that, so that you can create a longer session, but you're giving them a break, a little chance to stretch and get out of the boat, but you don't necessarily have to take the boat out and put it away and get it, that all that takes time in between sessions. So if you can keep boats on the water where you are, that's a bonus in terms of, saving 15, 20 minutes here and there.
Absolutely right. And our last topic for today is about what we should be wearing for cold weather training. So we know that some people row in a winter that is colder than other people. We used to have a rule of thumb of a air temperature of 6 degrees Celsius, or a equivalent taking into account wind chill factor. And that was particularly for young children, because they have fewer reserves of fat and they get cold much quicker than adults. So for the age group and fitness level of the group that you're working with, make your own rules locally. But the basic rule for dressing for cold weather training is what, Marlene?
Keep your head warm, keep your hands warm, and keep your feet warm. Keep everything warm. I think also, depending on the country that you live in, I know certainly for U.S. rowing and Rowing Canada, they have cold weather rowing guidelines as part of the organizational guidelines. So I would say, first of all, definitely be familiar with what those guidelines are with regard to the combination of water temperature and air temperature, or what your club's guidelines are. But definitely cold weather rowing, wear a warm hat. That's always going to keep a lot of your body heat in. Keeping hands warm is really important. And even people who row in Florida can have mornings that are, 5 degrees centigrade, or say about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is quite cold for somebody who lives in Florida. But, in January and February, you can get those mornings. And what I used to advise some of my Florida friends that I row with is just, always have a little emergency pair of fleece socks in your bag, and just cut a little hole for your thumb, and just put your fleece socks over and row, because oars are mostly stored outdoors in a lot of places in Florida, and it's your oar handles that are cold, and it's the cold handle make your hands cold. So, just having something like a little sock. Fleece is great because it's grippy, so you can actually feel like you can manipulate the oars quite well with it. But that keeps your fingers warm. It's much, much more comfortable. Dress in layers. There's lots of high-tech fabrics out there. I mean, I think you can spend as much money as you want on high-tech clothes these days, but your basic rules are to dress in layers and try to wear clothes that wick sweat away from you, and make sure that you have a good windproof type of rowing jacket on that's breathable, but at the same time, protects your core from getting cold from the wind. And one of my favorite things was to keep my feet warm. That was one of the things that if I had an extra jacket, or I even had a little fleece blanket for my single, that I would take my fleece blanket and I would just pack it right around my foot stretchers. I would just cover my whole foot stretchers and my feet. And it was, when you were rowing in colder weather, it was really quite nice and toasty. So I know you have some really nice things for hands. Tell us what those are.
I do. My favorite hands is a tip that was given to me by a very good girlfriend. And basically they are shooting mitts. So these are designed for people who shoot with guns. Mm-hmm. And these ones are made of sheepskin. So they have a knitted cuff and a sheepskin circle that goes across the back of your hand. And because you've got very little flesh, your blood vessels are really close to the surface on the back of your hand. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that bit of sheepskin next to your skin keeps your entire hand warm, even the fingers that are sticking out. So it's like a fingerless glove. And it has two little loops on the palm side. One goes across your fingers and one your thumb goes through. And for me, the benefit is that I can then hold the oar handle with my hand without anything between my palm and the oar handle, which makes me feel a bit more in control.
Oh, I think those look terrific.
I've used them for years.
I might have to get them for next year. I can't row right now for a little while, so but that looks great. For those of you who knit, I don't know if back in the old university days, when we had to travel to a lot of regattas, everybody was knitting sweaters back in then. I mean, I went to university in Boston, so we were always knitting ragwool sweaters, and I used to actually knit my Pogies and give them as gifts. And I would knit them like a mitten, but the mitten would actually it would slide right over the end of the oar handle if it was sculling oars, or it would have two openings on the side if it was for a sweet friend. And it made a cuff, and it just put your hand right in, but they were stretchy, and ragwool has the natural oils in it, so it repels water. And they weren't baggy, so they were really comfortable to row in. And there were times when I was first rowing my single, that even if it was really rough and just nasty and raining, I used to race with my Pogies on, because my handles wouldn't get wet, or what if the oar hit a wave and it wasn't going to go flying out of my hand. But it was more sock-like, because I think sometimes Pogies can be really baggy and cumbersome, and they're not comfortable to row in. I think I would go for something like what Rebecca has, which is not bulky or something that's pretty snug around your hand, that's breathable, that will keep you warm that way as well.
Certainly, I received an email this week to say that JL has a sale on with Pogies. So if you're into Pogies, there are plenty of places you can go and buy them.
Yes, and insulated tights are nice too. Fleece lined tights are great in the winter as well.
Yeah, my friend has a pair of fleece trousers that she puts on over the top of her tights when we're hanging around at regattas, and she calls them her Rupert the Bear trousers because they're kind of like a tartan plaid, I think you'd call it.
Motivation, right? They'll help your motivation. You can call them your power pants, right? So
good plan. My favorite hat is knitted wool, and it has a band of fleece on the inside, just in the lower bit. And so you get that combo of both the wool and the fleece. And that's pretty cool. Oh, good. I mean, I don't mean cool. It's pretty warm.
Yeah, yes, definitely. But staying warm, I think sometimes people underestimate the importance of having a warm hat and just keeping your hands and feet warm is definitely important. And when you get out of the boat, change right away. You know, you don't want to hang around in a cool boathouse in wet clothes, or go up and you know, it's important to stretch after you row if you have the time. Even 5 minutes counts. But, you know, before you stretch, go up and just, you know, put on a dry shirt underneath, because it is, even if you don't feel wet from sweat, you are. And it's really important to change immediately and just put on something dry, and then go stretch, and you know, then go on with your day. But I think that's an important thing of cold weather rowing too, is not to be hanging around in wet clothes.
Definitely not. I'm going to sing the praises of New Zealand merino as a base layer. It's a very fine wool, and it's a natural fabric, so of course it wicks beautifully. And a lot of people swear by that. So they'll have leggings and a long sleeve or a short sleeve t-shirt underneath all of the other clothes that you might choose to wear.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely well worth the investment, for sure.
Yeah, it's jolly expensive.
Yeah, but it lasts. I mean, it'll last years and years and years. So, you know, if you take care of it well, you know, those high quality training clothes will last you for a long time if you take care of them. So I think it's worth the investment up front sometimes.
Definitely. So I think that's everything that we had to cover, Marlene. Any final thoughts?
I think everybody just think about what's going to make you want to get to your next workout. What's going to inspire you? What can you change in your daily life that makes it just, you know, that much easier to go do your workout? You know, if you find you hit these little roadblocks, which everybody does, you know, just think about, well, what would make this more fun? What would, you know, is it getting a training buddy? Is it you know, subscribing to some new podcast that you're going to row while you listen to that? Is it joining a virtual team? You know, lots, and it, depending on what you're into, there's lots of ways, but, you know, try to elevate the fun factor. I think that's important. And I know last January, one of our very first podcasts, when you showed the picture of my erg studio, when, you know, looking out to the woods, train in a place that you like to be, you know, where there's light. And, you know, I mean, saying, oh, I have to go out to my freezing cold garage where there's no windows is really not a very hospitable environment for me. You know, I put my erg in the nicest part of the house because that's where I like to be. So I think, you know, there might be little things that you can do in your environment that really, you know, help you just enjoy training versus, you know, being in some, you know, scary corner of the basement where there's spiders, you know, so kind of where they're, you know.
Totally get that. We just have a little hi from Betsy Owen Mitchell, who's watching live.
Yes, Betsy, she was in the, she rowed in the Para Rowing World Championships in the year before Rio in the US double. So she rows down in Sarasota.
Congratulations. Excellent. It's lovely to see people watching us live. We're obviously broadcasting to several different places.
I'll see you in April. I'm coming to Sarasota in April. So
there's a promise. So if you want to find out more about Faster Masters Rowing, it's fastermastersrowing.com. I'm Rebecca Caroe for February 2020.
Yes, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Bye-bye.